Without further ado, I would like to introduce Baroness Bryony Worthington to make her opening comments. She has agreed to be a judge for our challenge as well. The Baroness is a British environmental campaigner and life peer in the House of Lords. She was instrumental in passing of the UK's Climate Change Act in 2008. We are honored to have you here, Baroness Worthington, and I hand over to you to launch our day of learning, inspiration, and change. Over to you, Baroness.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shami, and thank you, Jay, for emceeing us today. I'm so thrilled to be here, and I know it's different, it not being together in a physical way, but just looking at the list of participants and the number of people joining and the sheer range of countries and places that people have joined from, it really gives me hope that we're able now to do things collectively that we weren't just 10 or 20 years ago. And that's part of why I feel hopeful that we can tackle this challenge. So one of the things I was asked to do was just to provide some opening comments. And I wanted to just give you some stimulus in terms of my view of the climate challenge as a politician. And I have been, I suppose, working on this challenge now for about 20 years. And over that time, I've really become convinced that actually most of the problem with climate change is political. The technologies that we need are either available or are very close to being commercial, but we don't have the political will to make the changes that mean that they become the commonplace, they become the normal. And we're still locked into quite an old paradigm of how we make energy and how we feed ourselves and how we move around the planet. And it's shifting from those norms that we really need to do quite quickly. But politicians, sadly, in most places, find it really hard to take on these sorts of complex, long-term challenges. And there are at least 3 political challenges that I've observed firsthand that hold back action. The first is that this is a collective action problem. It needs everyone to move together. So if you're an individual country or member state trying to take action, you can always say, but hang on a second, what's the point in us taking the pain when someone else isn't acting? So that creates this kind of race to the bottom rather than a race to the top, which we need. The second problem is the timescales involved don't really lend themselves to political action. Most politicians are elected for a certain period, and they're always thinking about their next brief or their next tweet even, or their next election cycle. When you're asked to deal with a multi-decadal problem, which involves potentially taking difficult decisions today with benefits only happening in the distant future, that makes it very difficult. And the third one, which is probably the least talked about problem, is that essentially we have a tragedy of the incumbents, which basically means that we are not operating in a kind of equal playing field. We have significant headwinds when we're trying to take political action from the people who are protecting the status quo. So all of these 3 tragedies combined make it a really complex problem. But I'm hopeful. And the reason I'm hopeful is that humanity has incredible capability for invention and for change. And we've seen various revolutions in how we conduct our lives in the past. So as we approach these physical risks of climate change, these big changes that are happening, where we are seeing tipping points cascading into each other, melting of the ice caps, leading to less ice reflecting the heat, leading to more warmth. There's a lot of these natural feedbacks that we need to be very concerned about. This is a very risky and fragile time that we're entering. The good news is that there are also positive tipping points. There are cascades and domino effects that happen on the positive side. One example is how we're going to leave oil behind and move to electric vehicles. It's been very, very slow. It's taken us decades to get to that small penetration of electric vehicles, but suddenly now there's a big rush, and we're going to see this exponential shift because the technologies are better, they're going to be cheaper to run, and everyone's now realizing that we've got to crack this move to a zero carbon economy. So those positive societal tipping points are everywhere. And we as individuals can cascade. We can use the proverbial flapping of the butterfly wings to cause these chaotic effects in a positive sense. So that's why I'm hopeful. I think we've got technologies today that 20 years ago when I started out, we just had no concept that they were going to be so commonplace. I had no idea that we could be sitting here with 232 of us from all over the world having a shared experience and learning and discussing. So we've got new tools, we've got the technologies now that we can deploy to make collective action happen. So I'm hopeful that with the inventiveness of all of us, we'll be able to crack this. Charmy's asked me to finish with a personal action or collective action I think people could take. And I think one thing to say on this is that because we need systemic change, probably the most significant action you can take is as a citizen and engaging in politics and making political actions. That's because we really need to see really quick transitions where it's going to take everyone acting. And to do that, you need a common rule book. You need regulations and policies that mean even the laggards are forced to change. So that said, there are some things we can do as individuals. And one of the most powerful, I think, is what we choose to eat. And I would say, for me, the top action you can take right now, if you have a diet that is rich in meat or lots of red meat, cut it out. Just don't eat red meat. And that will have a big effect on demand. And it will mean that you have a whole ton of extra benefits in terms of animal welfare, health, and biodiversity. So cutting out red meat is the thing I would do individually. And collectively, if you have an institution, a school, a hospital, a company canteen where they have a menu, ask them to take meat off the menu too. So those are my recommendations. I'm hoping that this is going to be a really enjoyable experience for everyone. I hope you're going to learn a lot, but feel inspired and feeling like you can make a difference. I'm really looking forward to hearing all of the great ideas I know are going to come from this. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get to know some of your teams and to hear some of your ideas. I'm going to hand back to Jay now and just wish you all the best and hope you have a great conference.